Stand by. Hold
Are you a citizen? That question will not be on the 2020 census, which we will talk about right after this.
If you're looking for a new pet that your family will cherish every day, consider adopting from a shelter. Shelters are the best places to find a new pet. That's where you'll discover healthy, loyal, and loving animals, eager to become a part of your family. A person is the best thing to happen to a shelter pet, so bring home your new buddy today. To find out more, visit theshelterpetproject.org.
Welcome to Community Watch. Greg.
Doc,
Hey.
you seem to think the question will be on the census, huh?
I wouldn't rule it out yet. I hope it's not, but I wouldn't rule it out yet.
We'll let the experts decide.
Well,
The 2020 census.
yes, in case you hadn't figured it out, we're talking about the census on this show, and we'll be joined in a moment after our break by Wendy Davis, City Commissioner. But I learned a lot about the census when Wendy was a guest on Political Rewind about a week ago. And I knew some things about it, but there were a lot of things that I didn't know. So, and it's also a very complex thing, the
Yes.
census. It's a big endeavor. It's a very complex endeavor, and it's there are a lot of issues that go into it. So,
Like you, I was too when I listened to that episode. I never had attached a dollar amount or a dollar value to that question. I mean, I never thought about it. You know, should you ask that question or not, you know, for political reasons. But when Wendy laid out, there's really a dollar value attached to that question. I mean, that really changed how I was looking at that question. So, I mean, she'll get into that. But that was a very informative show about the census, and I had no idea how it would be rolled out compared to previous years.
Right, I didn't
so
know
that
that
was
either.
totally surprising to me as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
so this is one of those shows. I think all of our shows are valuable and important, but this is one you should really listen to. I mean, the census is a very important thing, and there's some details that you need to know about the census this year. So we will be right back with our guest. You don't want to miss today's show. See you in a minute.
The color in my garden keeps the pink in my cheeks. I was very independent and thought I could take care of myself. I fell and I had to have Meals on Wheels. They're my savior. My name is Lola Silvestri. America, let's do lunch.
Drop off a hot meal and say hello. Volunteer by donating your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org.
Welcome back to Community Watch. We're very happy to have with us again Wendy Davis, City Commissioner. Welcome.
Thank you. Always a pleasure to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Well, I knew after I heard Political Rewind that we had to do a show about the census. And I have to admit that I was just expecting, I don't need to say how many censuses I've lived through, but just like the past ones, you get a big packet in the mail and you put it off and forget about it and then finally get around to it. But that's going to be totally different this year.
Yes, the census in 2020 is not going to be a postcard that comes to your house and you fill out and just mail it back in. Instead, they're going to send you an invitation They're inviting you to go online or to call, I presume, an 800 number to participate in the census next year. So there are a lot of people who are really concerned about that an invitation to take another step will be more complicated for people. There are plenty of people who don't have internet access, as hard as that is for many of us to understand, right, when we're walking around with smartphones. But I try to see the positive side of it. The positive side of it is because it's an online function, we're not tied to any singular piece of paper, right? We can have tablets, smartphones, laptops, desktops, whatever, old rotary phone could even dial the phone number, right? And we can get out in the community where people are. I hope we have it like where you pay your water bill. I think the library is going to help in their computer lab. I'm hoping that when you open up that computer, the first thing it's going to say is, have you participated in the census yet? And we have an opportunity to get really creative about engaging with each other about the census.
Now, when does this process start?
Well, the organizing for it has already begun. Matter of fact, it's a little bit behind schedule. They actually start planning for the next census when the last one ends, right? So they've been planning for it for years. Local action started 3 or 4 months ago, right? And the actual invitation should arrive in late March. March 23rd is the date I have seen. April 1st is supposed to be the date of record, right? So April 1st, basically where you lay your head down to sleep, that's where you're supposed to fill out the census that you are, right? So there are a lot of college students who think that it's about their household and it should be back where their parents are. Or there are people who have young babies and they don't count the babies yet, right? So from a brand new newborn baby to someone who may be 100 and something years old and maybe not capable of going on the internet and filling out their own form, hopefully a family member can take care of that for them. If you have a foster child, that child is in your household on April 1st, that's part of your count.
Actually, I see an upside to that. Because how are we counting people who are not traditionally in a home? How are we counting people that are transient?
Right.
So I do see the potential to pick up more numbers by having an online portion of it.
Right.
Because we do have people that are transient. We have people that, for whatever reasons, are not just in a traditional this address,
Right.
as if everybody live at a permanent address. We know that's not true. And everybody that's not homeless don't live at a permanent address.
Right.
So I do see, to me, that is something that I'm happy to see, that we do have that option so that people can go online, because that's the potential to pick up a lot of people that's left out of that number.
I'm really hopeful, right? The discouraging part, as I believe y'all have already talked about, is the whole national political fracas, right? About the citizenship question. However it resolves or doesn't resolve, right? Whether the question's on it or not on it, what it's going to take, because there are people from all aspects of the political spectrum who are not trusting the government right now, right? And the far left, the far right, and everybody in between, there's a skepticism about it. People don't trust it. The census data is super secure, right? It's not sent to the IRS. It's not sent to the immigration officials. If the President of the United States wanted to see the census documents for Rome, Georgia, they literally are locked away in a vault. They're not shared. The data that's aggregated is shared, right? And it's very valuable for a lot of purposes, which we can get into talking about later. But your individual data is private and protected and sacred to the Census Bureau.
How do we know that?
I was about to ask the same question. It is as secure as anything else, right?
Well, first of all, there's a lot of laws related to it. Second of all, there are, over 250 years of experience with the census, and there have actually been occasions where the executive branch said, I really need that data, and the census people said, sorry, sir, you can't have it, right? So it's a part of the culture, and they're very serious about it. The actual head of the census was actually here in Rome about 6 weeks ago and spent a good deal of time talking about that privacy and keeping those details confidential.
Well, and I understand the potential with an online census of picking up certain parts of the population that maybe have not participated before. But I also see quite a few people who are not online, who are not in possession of a computer or a phone, that will be lost somehow. I mean,
well, so very valid concerns, right? And part of the reason why I am working really hard to hear locally for us to engage citizen volunteers, to be thinking ahead of where are these pockets that we might miss, right? Where are the communities that lack the internet access? Where are the communities that might be stay away when we get to the point after you have, there's from end of March through the end of May is sort of the time when we let people fill it out on their own and just encourage them to fill it out. But then at the end of May, we start sending people to knock on doors when we haven't, gotten that data back yet from that household, right? So, but trying to make sure that we have trusted voices, because there are people who would respond differently to Greg telling them how important the census is than you telling them or me telling them how important the census is, or another government official saying this is very important. They might need to hear from a 21-year-old, right, to other 21-year-olds why they should care, why that data is important. We need to get the college students to understand that they're supposed to sign up here, right? We need to make sure that the people responsible for counting even the prison population, right, get it counted accurately, because those numbers matter.
well, let's talk about that, because one of the things that came out in the Political Rewind show that you were a commentator on, a guest on, was why it matters so much. And I don't think people understand. I didn't fully understand. I feel like I do better now, but I think a lot of people don't understand why it matters so much.
Well, I think people have a basic understanding of some of the political implications, right? The bigger your state is, you might get another congressional district, right? They aren't necessarily thinking about if you gain one, that means another state lost one, because we are going to have 435 members of the House of Representatives. And so if Georgia adds another one, which we have, the last two counts, we've added one. That meant another state, usually up in the Northeast, right, lost one. So the political divisions matter. How we draw those congressional lines is done by population, right? How we draw the state House and state Senate lines is done based on population. And those population numbers are all derived from the census. That count takes us through 10 years. But what a lot of people haven't talked about, and I think what you were alluding to, was the financial implications of the census. So my friends at the Georgia Municipal Association got some information from the George Washington University Institute of Public Policy talking about, in Georgia, if you look at the 55 largest federal spending programs that come down to the states, Georgia gets about $23 billion, just over 835, 175, 686, right, in a year. And if you divide that by our population, which is just over 10 million, right, 10.3 million, that gives us about $2,300 per capita amount of those federal dollars that come down to our state. So
$2,300 a person.
A person, right? So if we miss counting one person, you're like, $2,300, that's not going to really affect anybody's budget for a lot of programs, right? But you think about that over a 10-year period. So right away, that math is $23,000. So I did some little calculations. If you missed 44, so undercounted 44 people, that gets us to $1 million over 10 years that didn't come to our community. Again, that's money we're all paying in all kinds of taxes that go up to Washington. And we're talking about whether they come back for these programs that are very important to our community.
So if there are 44 people that are missed.
That are missed, yes.
Then that's $1 million over 10 years.
Yes.
That does not come back
right.
to the community,
right.
to the state.
So I'll give you a very real world example, not just Wendy's fancy math, right? In Marietta, in the last census, they had anticipated that their population would be a certain amount from the projections, right? it ended up, their count was 7,636 people less than what they had anticipated. Want to hear what that number is? That's $17.5 million for 1 year. $175 million over a 10-year period that didn't come to the city of Marietta.
Wow, that's big. We've got to take a break. We will come back with more about the census. Please don't go away.
Your life is filled with opportunities to show the world you can take charge. It's waking up each day with a mission. It's working each day toward a goal. It's choosing to rise. It's charging forward with a purpose. It's changing the course of your life and taking charge of your future. If you're ready to be a Take Charger, enroll at Georgia Highlands College today.
Welcome back to Community Watch. We're talking with Wendy Davis, Rome City Commissioner, about the census. And when we went on break, we were talking about the potential losses for folks that are not counted, which could be huge. And I'm just thinking, Rome and Floyd County, what is our population now, roughly? I mean, do you know?
So it's around 90,000.
90,000.
Right? So obviously we would love to hit that 100,000 mark for the county, right? It just, all kinds of tiers. When you go over 100,000, it puts you in the big time instead of small, right? In terms of things. But we didn't grow much between the 2000 census and the 2010 census. I apologize, I don't have those figures in front of me, but we'd like to think that we grew a little more. So besides the money, which I'm happy to talk about some more, I think folks' eyes open up, and they, no matter where they are on the political spectrum, they're like, wait, what?
Yes.
Right? And a matter of fact, GMA, I was able to moderate a panel when we had our recent conference down there, and the GMA folks printed up these $2,300 bills to pass out, fake, intentionally not looking like currency, but to make the point. I wore a lot of green today to make the point of money, because I think we can all grasp that. If we can't grasp that every individual is important in our community and should be counted, and we need to know the makeup of our community for a lot of good reasons. If you think about economic development, the numbers that we use to talk about are census numbers, right? And that's, people are coming into our community or not coming into our community based in large part on those numbers. So, I mean, there are all kinds of different ways that these numbers matter.
But I'm just thinking, because your example of 44 uncounted folks would lead to $1 million lost.
Over 10 years.
And our population is 90 plus question mark.
Right.
It seems like it would be pretty easy to overlook 44 people in a number that large.
Yes. Yes, just like Marietta.
That's what I'm wondering. Do we have a
being
projection of how
7,000.
how Rome was undercounted? Do we have any idea?
I'm sure. So the interesting thing was the guy from Marietta had been involved in the 10 count.
Okay.
And then when it came in so low, they were freaking out and going, what should we have done differently? And he's trying to remember those lessons and do them differently this time, right? And I'm trying to have us learn from other communities' mistakes, if you will, right? I want us to be as creative as we can be. Typically, you set up it's called a complete count committee that's got a couple dozen people on it, right? You try to reach different parts of the community, make sure you're representative. In our county, you know, making sure you're getting people from all ends of it and all sides of it. But in my mind, it's going to take hundreds of volunteers just grabbing their piece of whatever part of the community, whether it's their street or their neighborhood or their choir or their Boy Scout troop parents, right? Soccer team, you know, however we want to divide it. who are those trusted voices? You know, the football coach here in town, a lot of people listen to him. Do we need to get the football coach doing a video and telling, you know, everybody this is important, be a part of the team, be counted? You know, I don't know what the answers are, but I know that we've got to find every different angle we can come up with to reach all those different pieces of the community, to make them understand they matter, they should be counted, and it's important for our community for a plethora of reasons.
You know, but there are a couple of things I have to admit about the census that bother me. And one is the prison population. Because prison populations are given credit for the people that's located in their prisons. And doing that whole prison to school to prison pipeline, the prison industrial complex, we saw a lot of prisons built in traditionally Republican states. And with African Americans being such a large percentage of those people, those states are getting money for people that's not a part of that community and not even really well, some of them not even well received, so to speak. That part has always bothered me. That, you know, I would much rather see that regardless what prison you're in, what community did you come from, get that money versus this small state or whatever that has this prison now. Like you take you take Somerville. So now when you add that prison population, that brings in a lot of money for that. Where I'm from Somerville.
Yes.
But that always bothered me because we know during that whole prison industrial complex, a lot of those prisons were built in traditionally Republican states. And that's a lot of funding going to those states off really the skin of black people and people of color.
And I would love for us to have a really long conversation about what we should or shouldn't be doing with our prisons and our criminal justice system. I happen to be in a little bit of a different space right now of saying if the law is count them where they are, I want to just make sure.
Of course you are, but I'm saying,
right,
I want to go on the record that I want people to be, because people need to know about the prison, because I don't think people realize that.
Yeah.
And because people don't realize that, no one is saying advocating for let's change that.
Right.
Yeah.
Good point. Good point.
You know, the question of, or the question about the question about the citizenship question.
Yes.
Greg mentioned this earlier, but I think it's important to explain why there is a financial implication to that issue as well.
Well, there are lots of implications to that.
Yeah.
So the census's own experts have said that adding a citizenship question will suppress participation in the census, particularly among communities of color, particularly among our Latinx neighbors, right? And what will that lower than realistic count mean? It will mean that those areas have less representation in all the political bodies. It will mean those areas have less money, right? And fewer resources coming in. And those resources will be sent to the more affluent, wider areas.
So there are obvious political issues with whether that question should be included or not. But I didn't really consider all of the financial implications too.
Right. It's multifaceted. Every way you slice it.
Because some of those, the communities that will lose money are not just liberal communities. There'll be communities all over.
All the agricultural communities, which are not affluent communities, will have fewer resources.
Well, I don't know of a city that, I don't know a city that won't be affected. You take Rome, you take all these surrounding areas. Right. If the Hispanic community is suppressed in the census count, that affects everybody.
Yes.
And so, we all have this, at least in this area, it's a growing population.
Yes.
So if that number is not truly accurate, then that's funding loss, and I don't understand. I can't, until you lay that out, I'm thinking, why would we not want that money? If the people are here in this community, why would we not want that money?
Right.
And why would we want to put in any barrier that would prevent people from that?
And it's about the politics of division. Yeah. That's what it's about, right? It's not about the law or the question. It's a crass political calculus, and it's unfortunate because, again, there are people on every side of the issue who are mad about it.
Yeah.
Right? And who, I mean, there are a lot of people saying, well, if it's on there, even though I'm a citizen, I'm still not going to participate just as a protest. And I'm like, please, 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 please. And there'll be people, if it's not on there, who are like, well, it's not fair. They're not citizens. They shouldn't be counted. Why are we counting them anyway? Well, because the Constitution says count people, right? I don't get to count my dog, although he's a part of my family, right? And spoiled to death. But living, breathing humans, I can't count everybody in America. I'm not in charge of that. And I'm not in charge here, right? I'm just an advocate. I'm just a evangelist of counting, of people mattering. It's pretty consistent, right, of what I'm about. And with the census, I'm trying to find all the different ways to let people, whatever message will reach whichever audience, I'm trying to deliver all those messages because it's really important that everyone's counted.
Let me take a shift a little bit in the census talk. This is a massive operation.
Yes.
They hire a lot of folks.
They do. They do.
So when does that, are people being hired now?
There are people already being hired. I really highly recommend, if you know anyone or you happen to be someone who is looking for part-time employment or full-time employment that is admittedly temporary, probably just over a year. The census workers will go probably till late summer, early fall of next year, depending on their role. 2020census.gov/jobs. Now, it feels like you're applying to a robot, because you pretty much are, but be patient, put your stuff in there. They're hiring not into offices, it's mostly hiring people to work from home, right? A lot of people, I heard that it may be as many as 200 people in this community alone will be hired. And the jobs, I think they're starting at $13 an hour and going up to $20 an hour.
Now, would this be a good kind of job for a college student?
It would be a great job for a college student. It would be a great job for a retiree. It would be a great job for anybody who would like to earn some extra money and who cares about this mission.
A great job for anybody that's unemployed.
Really wonderful job for anybody who's unemployed. So they are worried about being able to fill all the jobs. I've tried to tell them, the more they can tell people that it's in their community, right? Because it looks like you're applying for a job in Atlanta. And even if it's a $15, $16 an hour job, if you feel like you're going to drive to Atlanta every day, it's not going to really be that much money, right? So, but it's working mostly from home. Not all of it is going and knocking on doors and trying to get people to fill out the census. A lot of it is trying to find who are the right organizations in the community to get sparked. Some of it is managing the data.
We need to take a break. When we come back, we will give you that address again for applying for work. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
$145 over 92.
180 over 111.
I had a heart attack, a cardiac arrest, and then a stroke.
This is what high blood pressure looks like. You might not feel its symptoms, but the results from a heart attack or stroke are far from invisible or silent. Get back on your plan, or talk with your doctor to create an exercise, diet, and medication plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation.
Welcome back to Community Watch. We've been talking with Rome City Commissioner Wendy Davis about the census, the 2020 census, and you were going to give us again the address in case for folks who want to apply to work for the census.
Want to apply to work for 2020census.gov/jobs with an S.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's all be counted.
Yes, let's be counted. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on Community Watch.